It's your girl, the Grown Woman Gamer, and today I'm coming at you to talk about the Deandre Ayton Phoenix Suns situation. So, yesterday, the Indiana Pacers issued an offer letter, the biggest offer letter in history, to Deandre Ayton for $133 million. The Suns had roughly until midnight last night to either find a trade or then be on the clock to match the offer. According to reports, they matched the offer within minutes of receiving the information that he had signed this offer letter with the Indiana Pacers. So the big question is, why did it take all of this in order for the Phoenix Suns to offer Deandre Ayton a max contract? Well, I will tell you. Deandre Ayton, albeit an excellent player who has improved year over year and who is still very young and it's yet to be determined what his ceiling is, has demonstrated less than the ideal amount of takeover quality in moments where you would hope that a 7-foot player would rise to the occasion. Perhaps we've been spoiled by the likes of Shaquille O'Neal and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Bill Russell, but we still expect these really big guys, especially if they call themselves centers, to have a dominant quality that allows them to take over the game. And while that has transformed significantly in the last 30 years, we still have this idea in the back of our mind that if a guy is that much taller or bigger than everyone else on the court, that he should have the upper hand at the very least in the paint. And that would be on offense and defense. What has happened in the last 5 years or so is that we have these players who have a significant impact on the defensive end. Think Rob Williams in the last final series against the Golden State Warriors. He was not a reliable option on offense, and that's not all his fault. They're not really playing their offense through him, and that's another thing. The game is moving more and more and more towards this volume shooting and further away from traditional big man play. We even have big men like Embiid and Jokic shooting three-pointers like a small forward or a shooting guard. It is a very different game. But in a clutch, you would hope that old adage, you can't teach 7 feet, would kick in. And when you need your postman to deliver points in critical situations, points that in theory are easier to get than those three-pointers, you're hoping that he will rise to the occasion and give you the offense that you need in order to win the game. You're also simply just looking for a kind of physical dominance and aggressive play that puts more pressure on the opposing team in the paint, perhaps gets them into foul trouble or forces them into making these decisions that move them further away from your shooters so that you can get other people open. A solid offensive option in the paint is still a very important part of basketball, and we saw how having that can literally transform a series. If you go back to the series where Looney, I believe it was with the Dallas Mavericks, Looney blossomed in that series, showed us some things that we hadn't really seen from him because that's not the style of play that the Warriors typically go with. And him having that offensive productivity was one of the key differences between them having a series that was more tightly contested and one that was a gentleman's sweep. But I digress. With someone like Deandre Ayton, who has so much going for him, physically he is very agile for a center. He doesn't clog the offense or slow down the offense in any way. He has a little bit of a mid-range jump shot. He's decent technically as a paint player or offensive post option, and defensively he's great. But for some reason in these moments where you want him to elevate your team or be the centerpiece of your offense, it hasn't been as available, that level of play that you're hoping to get from him. And I've said something in multiple videos, which I'll repeat here, which is that as Deandre Ayton goes, so goes the Suns. When Deandre Ayton is an unstoppable force within the Suns offense, they win in virtually every one of those games. It frees Devin Booker up a little bit. It takes some of the pressure off of, let's be honest, an aging Chris Paul. And then you have those other players on the team who are decent, but have not been as reliable as a third offensive option, and you're just hoping that Deandre Ayton, when he's asked to be the number 1, number 2, or number 3 offensive option, that he again will rise to the occasion. So you have a owner like Sarver, who has never, as far as I know, paid a luxury tax. We won't get into all the other stuff that is being discussed around this man, but he hasn't been willing to pay those big dollars to have a team that is a sure bet to go to the finals. But that hasn't hindered them much in the last couple of years, because at least within the regular season, they've been, if not the best team in the league, one of the best teams in the league. And they've been able to get through series handily until they get to that point where they hit a wall. And that has a lot to do, again, with the fact that Chris Paul is getting older. So Deandre Ayton in the postseason will have to become a second offensive option when Chris Paul runs out of gas. Plus, if Chris Paul runs out of gas and Deandre Ayton is kind of an afterthought, then that allows opposing teams to really focus on stopping Devin Booker. And at that point, the offensive productivity and the offensive effectiveness of the Phoenix Suns literally shuts down. And that's precisely what we saw in that game 7 against the Dallas Mavericks, which was all at once embarrassing, shocking, and just one of those things that happens in the NBA. And you're like, how does it happen that a team loses like that in a moment of game 7? I've never seen it. But again, I digress. Back to Deandre Ayton. So if you combine Sarver's general unwillingness to go deep into the luxury tax with some very legitimate question marks around whether or not Deandre Ayton will ever be this dominant center in the league that people have to literally prepare for, then that will create a reluctance to offer him an amount of money and a long-term deal that locks you in to him as your center and as your third guy on offense. So I get it, but at the same time, this is a business. He is young, and while he isn't on the level of a Joel Embiid or Nikola Jokic, he still has this potential, and he's still very young. And you can see that as far as skill goes and his ability to develop these defensive and offensive skills that are necessary to be successful as a center in the NBA, he has that. He even has a halfway decent basketball IQ. His passing is pretty accurate, and he knows what passes to make. You can see him learning to move as a center with the guards in a way that is complementary. He, like I said, is very agile. All these little elements that you would build into a great center, he has, but there's something within him that hasn't happened where mentally he gets what it takes to really take over a basketball game. And frankly, this is the most important thing for Deandre Ayton if he's going to live up to this contract. But I believe he deserved to get paid, because there are players who are not as productive as he is who are getting paid equally as much, if not more. But it does put the Suns in a difficult position because they've had this squad for going on 3 or 4 years, and we know what they're capable of. But at the same time, you have to ask the question, can this team get over the hump and win a championship? Looking at how things are developing with other teams and what has occurred in this last year with the Golden State Warriors winning, having a healthy Clippers, the Lakers may contend, who knows? We'll see. That's as big of a question mark. Memphis is getting better. Dallas is arguably always going to be a problem. It just begs the question, is this the squad that will help Chris Paul finally get himself a championship ring and bring another chip to the Phoenix Suns? I don't know. The way it looks, it is what it is. I don't think that this is the best situation that the Suns could have been in. The best situation would have been able to get Kevin Durant. But anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Hit that notification bell, subscribe to the channel, comment whether you agree with me or not, and I'm out.